You're listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets. Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Builder's Mindset. Today we're going to just skim the surface of one of my favorite topics in home building, and that is product development. And when I say skim the surface, I mean I could probably do a whole series on product development and value. And I'm super excited because this episode begins our first round of episodes where we're going to touch on a topic, and then next week's episode we'll have a special guest who is truly an expert in that topic. And we'll talk with them to go a little bit deeper, to give you a little bit more knowledge, information, insight, and thoughts on that topic. So this will be a little bit of the breadth of the topic, and then next week we'll go into the depth. And I'm super excited about next week's guest, and I think you are really going to enjoy it. I've already recorded it, and I'm super excited, so looking forward to that, and this series where we're going to do topics with guests. So, with that said, as I said, skim the surface. So, production home building and product development, what does that entail? From my perspective, product development on the very surface entails architecture, structural engineering, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design, solar designs if you're including that, or you're in a municipality or a state where you're required to do that, as well as energy modeling and designs, Title 24 in California or HERS in other markets. And lest we not forget the specifications of a home and the scopes of work. So let me work these backwards. Scope of work. What should be included in a scope of work? In a scope of work, I believe you should include everything that you want as a company or a division for how you're going to build a house. What would that example be? Let me give you a simple example. Let's say that you are going to do a particular drywall finish always. You're always going to do a knockdown texture on the wall and a knockdown texture on the ceiling. Or you're always going to do an orange peel medium on the walls and an orange peel on the ceiling. You would want to put that in your scope of work because that is something that you're always going to do consistently as a standard. Let's say you have a certain particular call out for a certain type of lumber that you want used for a certain specific area. Let's say all of the shelves that you want to do in your closet, you want them to be MDF and not particle board. You're adamant about that. That's what you want. You put that in your scope of work. Scope of work for me is something like you're always going to do it that way. If there are certain things that you sometimes do a certain way, but then maybe in different communities or different level, like a higher price point community might do something else. Let's say, back to the drywall. Let's say that you do a knockdown texture on the walls and the ceiling 75% of the time, but 25% of your business is a much higher end community, neighborhoods, and you do a level 4 smooth finish. Then you wouldn't want to put the drywall finish in your scope of work. You'd want to put that in your specifications, because I believe your specifications should be, at the very least, I prefer specifications are target consumer group level driven, but at the very least they're community driven, and you should at least have a certain number of specifications. I advocate, we can go deeper in this, I advocate for 3, no more than 5. But realistically, if you're doing less than 500 houses a year at a given division, there's really no need to have more than 3 specifications. And so, you know, in that drywall perspective, you know, like I said, maybe it's knocked down in your lower entry level and your move up, and maybe you do a level 4 smooth in your upper. So that's where specifications, the scope of work, are things you're always going to do no matter what the price point is. Specifications are things that you're going to modify, typically because of price point, where the community is and what the price point is. And then let's go back into, then you've got your energy. Energy, in my opinion, is something that is so often overlooked from a purchasing and a buying perspective. Most of the builders that I've worked for, it's usually handled by what's called a project manager or forward planner. And they're really, while they may be well versed in the code itself, passing code from an energy perspective in today's market, in just about any municipality, in any state, it's like making, it's like making chili. Like, there are so many different kinds of chili that you can make. Chili, no bean chili, vegetarian chili, spicy chili, not spicy chili, you name it. Energy codes are like chili because there are so many different ways to make it. And I believe it's something that the purchasing team should really drive and be in charge of, because how you make that chili has an impact on your cost. So let's not overlook the energy chili as it relates to product development. Okay, so let's keep working our way up now. So now we're gonna go to electrical, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing designs. Same thing. So many of the parts of the mechanical and the plumbing, to some degree electrical, but not quite so much, are usually coming from the energy model, the energy chili. What type of furnace, efficient furnace you're putting in, what type of water heater, what efficient is, what model it is, what type of AC unit, how are you doing that? Are you doing, what SEER ear rating are you using? Are you using mini splits? Do you have to use heat strips because you're doing a heat pump? So those as well, for the same reason, they're part of the chili that I firmly believe the purchasing department should be driving that. And what I find is, if it's even being done at all, it's often being driven by that same other department, like forward planning or project management, and it's often not done unless it is absolutely required for city submissions to get your approvals. And a lot of municipalities still don't require plumbing sheets. P sheets they're often referred to. They don't require E sheets, electrical sheets. Mechanical, for the most part, every market I've worked in, you almost have to do a mechanical, like your J, D, and S. You may have heard that term before. But we often don't do electrical and plumbing unless we have to. And I highly recommend, do you save a little bit of money not doing them? Yes, you do. But do you create some other issues in terms of making sure that your trades have what they need to build the house right? Give them a guideline, give them a map of how to put it in? Yes. So I highly recommend you do it. And I highly recommend that the purchasing team is driving that process. All right, let's keep working our way up. Structural plans are super important when it comes to your cost. And you will find that not all structural engineers are created equally. There's a variety of different ways for the structural engineers to do their calculations and their math. You would think, I love math, and you would think, like A squared plus B squared equals C squared. There's no other way around it. But there's some variability and flexibility. And in the defense of the structural engineers, these are components we're using, wood and fasteners, and they're very complicated formulas to set up for the first time around. And so it's very important that you pick a structural engineer that aligns with how you want to build a house, and that in that alignment they have a value-oriented mindset of how they approach that design. Keep working our way up. Sometimes, though, the structural engineer gets the architecture and they're basically given a handicap, a crutch. They're starting from the back because the architects design 4-foot double cantilevers, or the architects show 6 and 12, 7 and 12, 8 and 12 pitch roofs, or they've got 14 roof planes on a 2,500 square foot 2-story home, and the structural engineer is at a disadvantage already trying to do an effective design because the architect really hasn't thought through bearing loads, and cantilevers and exterior elements. So it's important also, and I believe the best way is to have purchasing involved, if not driving the process of selecting and managing the structural engineer and the architects. And so on the architectural side, I've looked at this a number of times, and by the time you have put your foundation in the ground, framed your house up, put your windows in, you have essentially already used up around 30 to 40% of your direct costs, whatever those costs may be. So your foundation and your framing and your roof and your windows are a huge part of the cost of your home. So when we talk about product development from a value perspective, and don't get me wrong, like I like to build the most cost-effective home possible, and I'm the one who's usually trying to pull stuff out. However, there is a value equation to do, and sometimes some things cost money, but they create a level of value that makes the house perform well, present better, sell better. And so you want to be very thoughtful about that. And this includes, the number of corners that we have in our foundations, the number of pop-outs that we have on first and second floors, the type of exterior cladding material, and that's very market specific. In certain markets like Colorado, typically shiplap siding is cheaper than stucco. In markets like Arizona and Southern California, Southwest, stucco is typically cheaper than shiplap siding. So you want to keep these things in mind when you put all this together. And once again, so I said purchasing, in my opinion, should be very, very involved, if not driving this process, particularly for your production home builders who are trying to keep your costs competitive, have a great value proposition, and compete with the larger builders who have, scale and size on their side when they're buying things. And so windows, there's another thing too. Windows aren't cheap. They're expensive. They create headers to bear the weight of those openings. They make passing energy codes harder because they don't have as great insulation properties as like typical wall systems. So, but windows help. Windows sell homes. I remember one time in my career, long time ago, I actually saw a home by one of the top 20 public home builders in the Colorado market, and I literally walked the house, and every bedroom in the house had one window, and it was the code required egress window, and there was one window in the living room, and it was very, very streamlined. That might not be what you're trying to do, but it might be. Affordability is a big thing right now. And so this is where I go back to that value proposition. the value proposition is different when you, actually everybody has a different value proposition, but when we're looking at lower price point product and the affordability issues that we have, the value proposition is a little bit different today than it may have been when it is a lot different than when interest rates were 3% and now interest rates are 6.5%, because the incremental mortgage payment increase for adding a window that's arguably going to add, let's say, a window will roughly add, let's say, $300 to $500 in a house, depending upon the size of the window. That's the cost of the window, the installation of the window, the header for the window, the extra framing to get that window to sit, and then potentially maybe it's got some other energy implications. But $300 to $500, you got to price that up because the home builder's got to make some margin. So that, let's just call it $500 to $750. The incremental cost of that on a monthly mortgage payment is a lot different at 6.5% than at 3%. And so we've got to be very, very, very thoughtful about what we put in a home. And they have to be things that buyers need. And if they're things that they want, from a value perspective, they have to be costed appropriately to be relative to how much they want it. And it has to be affordable. And I've watched over the last 2 or 3 years as interest rates have risen, certain things and movements that have impacted buyers. I've watched buyers shift down from larger homes at 3 to 4% interest rates, 5-bedroom homes with flex spaces, to 4-bedroom homes with flex spaces, to 4-bedroom homes, because that's what they could afford on a monthly payment. I've watched buyers in the Southern California market go from 3%, I'll buy that solar system all day long. At 6.5%, they're taking the lease option for the solar. So product development is key. It's paramount. There are tons of things that go into product development and how that implicates the cost of a home. And so I just wanted to go very high level and cover that piece of it. And I think maybe what we'll do is we'll delve a little bit deeper in future episodes into each of these categories: architecture, structural engineering, mechanical, electrical, plumbing design, energy designs, and solar designs. And then we'll even maybe go in a little bit into the site planning and grading and how that impacts your lot costs, like your driveways, and landscaping costs based on front yard to rear yard sizes and things like that. So, it's super, super important. And I find that more builders are starting to move this over under the purchasing department, which I'm a big advocate of, because they know what the things cost, right? So when they're looking at, do we want to do stucco or shiplap, they can tell the team they're working with that trade-off. Okay, that'll look nicer and we want this. Can we afford it? Can the buyer afford it? And so it's becoming more common to see that over there. I hope it continues to move more in that direction. And we'll, as I said, delve deeper next week. Special guest coming, and we're going to talk a bit more about home design and value, architecture and value, product development and value, and talk about how we put more home in our product development, how we get more out of our home, more bang for the buck in a very value oriented way, with our special guest next week. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you again for listening. I believe this is episode 9, if I'm remembering it correctly. I might be a little mixed up. Really enjoying these. If you're enjoying these, please subscribe, hit the like button, and also share it with a friend. Share this out with somebody who you think would enjoy some of these series. Maybe there's one of the certain episodes that you like, that a friend might like or a colleague might like. Please point it in their direction. It'll help a lot with making it get out to more people who might want to learn a little bit more about home building and the operations side of the home building business. Thanks again for listening to The Builder's Mindset. Mike DiGiovanni. We'll see you next week with our special guest. Have an amazing day. Thanks for listening to The Builder's Mindset with Mike DiGiovanni, presented by Amazing Mindsets. Remember, your mindset matters,